Tahaad Pettiford once again shows his big game ability. Welcome into this edition of the Barn Hoops Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jacob Hillman, and we are diving into Auburn Basketball's victory over Oregon, 84-73, in its first game of the Players Era Championship, the first of 3 consecutive years that the Tigers will compete in this championship, and obviously a major one in college basketball now. So there's 18 teams this year, 32 next year, and it seems to be growing more and more towards that big-time tournament feel. But this was a huge win for Auburn, as it really was led by the charge of Tahaad Pettiford in this game. And he was so impressive in this game after kind of a slow start to the season. And it was discussed quite a bit by the broadcast team, by many fans, that Tahaad's not quite playing up to the level or the expectation that many had for him coming into this season, specifically with his first team All-SEC honor, some All-American hype and talk around him. And tonight he looked like that, even with fouling out, because you could probably argue that very first foul he had in the first half could have been a foul the other way. And that just wasn't how it went. Regardless, Tahaad looked like his usual self in a big game away from home. And we'll kind of dive into that. We talked about it a few times here on the Barn Hoops Podcast, but let's dive into it a little bit more of why Tahaad Pettiford is just better away from home and what he can do to improve his play inside Neville Arena, because when you get into the SEC, that is going to matter. But don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button here on YouTube, on the Barn Auburn Podcast Network, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Do the same thing there, as there's so much content to take in here over the next few weeks as Auburn basketball continues play in the Players Era Festival. We'll have that covered right here on the Barn Hoops Podcast. And then it's going to be the Top Button Podcast with Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie 5. And then Village Vice with Zach Blackerby and Brad Law. They're going to have all your coverage with the Auburn football coaching search coming up over the next several days. And obviously that is going to come to an end here over the next week or two. Auburn wants – John Cohen said it in his press conference following the coaching change, that he wanted to make that hire the Sunday after the Iron Bowl. That could be this upcoming Sunday. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but stay tuned right here with all the coverage and the analysis of what's to come with Auburn football, as well as the 90th Iron Bowl on Saturday. But right here, we're focused on Auburn defeating Oregon in the Players Era Championship out in Las Vegas at Michelob Ultra Arena. And again, Tahaad Pettiford, big game ability. He showed it with 24 points on 9 of 18 shooting. Really wasn't even all that good from 3, 1 for 5 from deep. And he was 5 for 6 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers. And he did foul out. Again, he shouldn't have fouled out, because that first foul that was called on him just wasn't a foul. If anything, it was a foul on Nate Biddle, and he got away with one. So I don't really discredit him that much, because I think that's a cause or an effect of his defensive effort, and the defensive effort was there tonight. He had some big time moments in that game. We'll check out some of the defensive stats. It only shows him as 1 block, but I thought he made some big time stops defensively that were because of how well he played on defense. And that goes back to what head coach Stephen Pearl said going into the Houston game, that the shots are going to fall when he has that effort on defense, and he proved that tonight. And, you know, as I mentioned, the difference between Tahaad at home and away from home, not specifically on the road, but a lot of times in these multi-team events or just in a neutral site environment, he really does look to be at his best. We look back at this season, and so far this year, his 2 highest scoring outputs have come in the 2 games that were not inside Neville Arena. He scored 24 last night against Oregon, 15 against Houston in Birmingham. And outside of that, he had 13 against Merrimack and 11 against Bethune-Cookman. But against Wofford and Jackson State, he scored a combined 15 points. Just wasn't really that involved in the game. And a lot of it is he's not hitting his shots. He's getting shots. He's 19 of 66 on the year. Last night was his best shooting performance of the season, 9 of 18. Even against Houston, he was 5 of 14. So that's only 36% from the field. So how does this translate at home? Now, first of all, it's going to start with continuing this performance against Michigan tonight or against whoever the opponent is on Wednesday or Thursday, or we'll get into however the heck we decide who Auburn plays on Wednesday or Thursday. But that's where it starts. He's got to get into a rhythm. And when he does, hopefully it translates over to that SEC ACC challenge against NC State next Wednesday. And NC State just fell to Seton Hall in the Maui Invitational last night. And I see that as an opportunity for Auburn to really take that next jump and be a team to be reckoned with on the national stage. Because right now, obviously, with the way that first game went, there's not a ton of hype around this team. With the Bethune-Cookman game going to overtime and it being Stephen Pearl's first season as head coach, there's not as much talk around this team as there was at this point last year when Auburn was inside the top 5, inside the top 3, and winning the Maui Invitational. Right now, there's still some talk. There's nobody's really talking down that I see on Auburn, but it really doesn't seem like anybody believes in this team to be an SEC or national title contender. And I'm not quite to that point yet, but if Auburn's to perform the way it did last night against Michigan tonight and pull out a win, then you're going to start to see the vision. You're going to start to see that ceiling for this team rise into SEC title contention. But right now, again, it's going to come down to these playmakers like Tahaad Pettiford, game to game, being able to carry over these performances. And I thought it was really good to see Pettiford continue that and be the leader out there and just really in a game where going into it, we didn't expect really to have Keyshawn Hall. Now, he was out there, he started, and he played a game-high 36 minutes, believe it or not, because Keyshawn Hall is really just that guy, and I'm so impressed by him. And he did not have really the flashiest 18 points ever, and it wasn't because he got to the free throw line a bunch, but, I mean, he just really grinded out those 18 points with 2 threes, 5 made field goals, and 6 for 6 from the free throw line. I think he's up there with the best free throw shooters in the country. It's his first game. He hasn't scored 20 points in, which is pretty wild. And he grabbed 6 rebounds as well. So he's doing it all. And he is really helping this Auburn offense kind of keep churning whenever. And let's look at the first half in this game against Oregon. Tahaad Pettiford was really doing everything for the Tigers. And then outside of that, it was Keyshawn Hall with 9 points. But that was really it that you had consistently. It was good to see Filip Jovic score a couple of baskets in that first half and carry that over into the second half as well. And was the biggest thing for me. And Emeka Oporum, those two guys coming off the bench because Keyshawn Murphy got 2 fouls pretty quickly. Jovic did also get into foul trouble very quickly. But I still want to see those guys continue to grow and play in these bigger games against some of these bigger teams. Listen, this Michigan team tonight is bringing 3 centers, and they're going to all play at the same time. Auburn's going to have to play as big as they possibly can to really contend and compete with this Michigan team. So how does Jovic and Oporum play into that? We'll see. But back to the scoring output, Keyshawn Hall just really kept Auburn afloat in this first half. It was 37-37 at halftime. And, without Keyshawn Hall, I don't know what that looks like, quite frankly. And Pettiford did all he could to carry it, and he did a heck of a job at that, being really the player of the game. But I think Hall was the key. And that leads to my next point of really Elyjah Freeman and Kevin Overton being zeros in the first half. Overton he made a shot in the first half. He was 1 of 5. He was 0 for 2 from 3. Elyjah Freeman was 0 for 2 from the field in 14 minutes. So he didn't really do much on the offensive end. Now, again, defensively, both these guys are doing their jobs and showing the effort that they need to be out there and to show that. But I mean, Auburn over the first 4 or 5 games has been used to scoring in the 40s and 50s and was down in the high 30s in this first half. And I think that's because of the lack of production from Kevin Overton and Elyjah Freeman. Now in the second half, things change. And Kevin Overton, he hits another couple buckets, including really the sealer with that dunk at the end of the game to clinch it. Elyjah Freeman comes up with 8 points in the second half, including a big 3. He gets to the free throw line, and he has 4 rebounds. He has an assist, and he has a couple steals. And it's just they come up big in the biggest moments. While they were down in the first half, didn't look like their best effort, they come up huge in that second half with 12 combined points between Freeman and Overton, while Pettiford continues to lead the charge with his 11 points in the second half. Keyshawn Hall, second leading scorer with 9 points. So it's a consistent theme here with Hall and Pettiford. It's all about who's going to be the guy to step up. And in the first half last night, nobody wanted to be that guy. In the second half, it was Elyjah Freeman and Kevin Overton, alongside who I'd say Kaden Magwood really had his best few minutes as a freshman point guard for Auburn. Let's look at a sequence real quick. At the under 12, Auburn comes out, misses a 3, gives up a 3, turns the ball over. Oregon hits a layup to take the lead. But what I thought was so important was Kaden Magwood showing the poise of what you would see out of a veteran point guard, coming down the floor, hitting a mid-range, taking the lead right back. And guess what? Auburn never surrendered the lead again. That was the biggest moment of this game by far, was that under 12 sequence, right? Coming out of that timeout where Oregon looks like it's starting to gain the momentum of the game. And if the Tigers aren't careful, they've got a freshman point guard out there because their all-SEC freshman is in foul trouble. Things could get out of hand, but they give him the ball, let him take it down the floor, hit that mid-range, and it settles in. The team settles in and just kind of, I wouldn't say cruises to the end, but really takes control of the game. And then obviously the last 5 or so minutes is when the Tigers start to cruise. And it was just so good to see out of Kaden Magwood. And while the stats don't look perfect because he only played 7 minutes, 4 points on 2 of 4 shooting, 0 of 1 from 3 with 3 assists and only 1 turnover, but 2 steals. You're going to take that every single time. And that's ultra important for this Auburn team because of the lack of depth in the backcourt. You've got Tahaad Pettiford, you've got Kevin Overton, and I guess you're counting Elyjah Freeman as your third guard. And until one of these freshmen, Kaden Magwood or Simon Walker got his minutes, 4 minutes, but he missed this 3, so he didn't get back in the game. Unless one of those 2 guys is really step up, that's going to be a lot of pressure on Pettiford and Overton and Freeman to really carry the load. And that's not something you can do and be a title contender. You can be a good team and rely on a guy like that. But for this team to really take that next step, it's going to take one of those freshmen becoming a true contributor on this team, especially in the backcourt. So that leads me to the point of foul trouble with Auburn. Obviously, we've talked about it. Pettiford fouled out. Shouldn't have fouled out, but regardless, he still would have had 4 fouls, and Auburn would have had to be careful with him late in that game. And there was also another moment that I want to highlight, because when Tahaad got that 4th foul, Auburn, Oregon's in the bonus. Oregon shoots its free throws. Auburn doesn't immediately pull Tahaad out of the game. The Tigers have 3 timeouts. So what they do is run an offensive set for Tahaad, let him bury a mid-range jumper, immediately call timeout, and then pull him and do the offense-defense substitutions with them when possible. And I thought that was the best example of this coaching staff being a veteran coaching staff. Yeah, it's a first-year head coach with Stephen Pearl, but these guys have all worked together for years and really are prepared for these moments and have been prepared for them over the last several years under Bruce Pearl. And it showed in that moment to really be aware of the situation, let let your leading scorer, who has shown that he is out there to win this game, have that offensive possession, then get him out and play the offense-defense substitution game. So that was a huge moment. But regardless, you would like to not be in that situation with the foul trouble. And yeah, Pettiford has those several fouls just from playing aggressive defense. And I'm not upset with it because I like his effort on defense. But as we just mentioned, I'm not so sure about the depth of this backcourt. And you can't afford to lose Pettiford in just 29 minutes. He's probably going to need to play 35 minutes in a lot of these games for Auburn to have a chance and to win. So I want to see him kind of find that happy medium between the aggression on defense and not fouling. So that's big time. But I look at Keyshawn Murphy. This was a difficult matchup for him against Nate Biddle, a towering center for Oregon. And it's only going to get tougher tonight against Michigan with those big men. And he's going to have to continue to find a way to play more like he did in the second half, where he had 2 fouls, but he was definitely more, I felt, comfortable in the paint against Biddle. And that was super, super important for the Tigers, as they wanted to, it seemed like they wanted to try and get in the lane more and more and work the paint, but it was just difficult to do against a taller guy like that. And Michigan just has, again, a towering front court between Yaxel Lindeborg, who, he looked at Auburn, and probably the reason Auburn didn't get him was because it was in the Final Four this past year. And he committed to Michigan the day of Auburn's Final Four game against Florida. But just, again, he was playing the 3 last night against San Diego State en route to that win for the Wolverines. So is it going to be a mixture of Murphy, Oporum, and Jovic? Because Jovic, again, when he got in the game, he got into foul trouble and could only play 14 minutes, but he looked pretty dang good out there. 4 for 4 from the field for 9 points with a free throw. He grabbed 3 offensive rebounds, dished out an assist, and only turned the ball over 1 time. He looked as comfortable as he has so far this year in an Auburn uniform. So that was good to see. And I'd like to see him more at the 4 position instead of the 5. But I think what this team needs more of is Filip Jovic at the 5, just with the depth. Right now, you look at the 2 through 4 positions, and while Auburn isn't super reliant on that kind of basketball, it does play a factor. You know who your shooting guard is out there. If Tahaad Pettiford's out there, the shooting guard is probably Kevin Overton or Elyjah Freeman. And then Keyshawn Hall is the 3 or 4. And Sebastian Williams-Adams is the 4 if Hall's in there at the 3, and so on. So how do you handle some of these big guys going forward, whether it's tonight against Michigan or the front court of Florida that's so elite, led by Alex Condon? It's going to really take a lot of defense without fouling down low, because if you get into these situations where you're in foul trouble, then you have to play differently late in the game. And especially when you're tired and those legs aren't quite as strong as they were early in the game, it's way more difficult to do. So I want to see this defense really figure it out early on, because it was early in the game where the foul trouble came into play, and Auburn had to start playing more carefully and making switches and substitutions that maybe they didn't want to play those rotations quite at that point in the game. So the free throw shooting looked a heck of a lot better. Sebastian Williams-Adams had that over 2 trip late in the game, but ultimately it was fine. He was 4 for 6 from the free throw line. Tahaad Pettiford was 5 for 6, and Elyjah Freeman was 3 for 4. Everyone else made all their free throws, 19 of 23 from the line. That's 82.6%. You're taking that every single night this season, and you're running with it. So happy with the free throw shooting. It really is starting to turn the corner. As you know, if Auburn had a performance like it did against Houston last night against Oregon, probably doesn't win that game, as Oregon was 18 of 23 from the line. So a similar shooting performance from them at the line. If the 3s start to fall for Auburn, then things really start to change, I feel like, for the Tigers. Who is it going to be? Tahaad Pettiford? Is it going to be Keyshawn Hall? Who knows? We'll see. So Yeah, Tahaad Pettiford. How does that translate to tonight against Michigan? And why is it important for him to continue these big game moments? And he's going to have his hands full defensively against Elyjah, who is a transfer from North Carolina and is a big time offensive threat. I think Pettiford can have his way offensively against Cadeau, but defensively, how is he going to fare? Because last night, I mean, Jackson Shelstad was 4 of 17 from the field. It's pretty dang good. And I don't know. That's something that is going to be something to watch, I think, going forward, is how do these teams' primary players play? Because so let's look at last night again. So Jackson Shelstad, 4 of 17 from the field. He only scores 9 points. He's 1 of 11 from 3, and that's because of the way Auburn guarded him. Really impressive. He had 8 assists, and that's partially because of what Takai Simpkins did and scoring 22 points on 5 of 8 shooting from 3, and he also got to the line and shot 7 free throws and made them all. So is this a kind of an issue where Auburn's defense is going to let someone you don't think about kind of score? Because let's even look at Nate Biddle, the big man. He scored 10 points, but he was 2 of 11 from the field. And you look at the second half, and he scored a big fat 0 with an 0 for 4 shooting performance, 0 of 2 for 3. He got into foul trouble. He had 3 fouls in the second half, 2 turnovers, no rebounds. I mean, that is exactly what you're looking for from this Auburn team and this Auburn defense and even the offense. But you look up on the box score again, and it's Devin Pryor, who has 9 points and 10 rebounds. So he fills in kind of that gap for the Ducks in that aspect. And they're not the guys that you expect. So instead of Shelstad getting the scoring done, it's Simpkins who's getting the scoring. Instead of Biddle getting all those rebounds, it's Devin Pryor. And how does Auburn kind of look at that and watch that in film? We'll have to see how it translates tonight, because I think it's a short turnaround, obviously, less than 24 hours to get ready. And then you're going to have another game after that, and you don't even know the opponent until after all the games are done tonight. So this is going to be a really interesting week to kind of look back on, I think, when we get into next week and into the SEC and so on. And then into next year depends on now next year. Hopefully this looks a lot different, and you kind of have an expectation of who you're going to play. Of, all right, if this team wins, then we're playing them, so on. We don't want to see that. What we just saw this week, where you really don't have any clue. So again, Auburn's defense contains Oregon's best 2 players. 2 other guys find their way, but Auburn wins by 11, and Auburn's going to be in a lot of close games this year. So is it a case of how the Tigers close things out? Is that going to be the most important thing that we see from Auburn this season? I think so, because we know with Tahaad Pettiford and Keyshawn Hall and even Keyshawn Murphy, I'm still waiting on Keyshawn Murphy to have his first big game scoring-wise, and that is going to show this team's full potential. And when it's in a close game, whether it's tonight with number 7 Michigan or next week against NC State inside Neville Arena or on the road against a number 2 Arizona team, how do the Tigers fare in the final 4 minutes of that game? We saw it against Houston, but not to its full strength, because Keyshawn Hall was out of that game. And really Auburn, I thought, closed that Houston game out well with the way its defense shut down Houston over the last 3 minutes and hit some big shots. Just didn't hit the one shot at the end to ultimately take the lead. So I want to see Auburn in a much in a close situation and them close it out the way that they could have against Houston. Quote that I took away from last night was from Stephen Pearl. In the first half, offensively, we were sloppy. There was a lot of my turn shots. We just didn't execute. Tahaad kept us in the game in the first half. And when you look back at it, we talked about it a little bit with Kevin Overton and Elyjah Freeman. But even Keyshawn Murphy, he was 1 for 2 from 3. So you'll take him whenever he can make that 3-point shot. But again, it's just Overton's 1 for 5, Freeman's 0 for 2. Now you go towards the bench with Emeka Okporo, Sebastian Williams-Adams, and Filip Jovic, and they are combined 4 for 5 from the field. That's what you want to see. And I think that's kind of what carried over for Overton and Freeman and for Murphy in the second half was how to really work the inside of the paint and the lane, and that was good to see. And I'm sure Coach Pearl's even referencing Tahaad and Keyshawn Hall, even though they scored a combined 24 to 37 points in the first half. Some of those shots probably still weren't the smartest or exactly what the offense was drawn up to do in that moment. So it's still a learning process for this team. Remember, it's 10 newcomers. These guys are learning to play with each other and against some of the best teams in the nation, whether it's Houston or now Oregon or Michigan or whoever the heck it is on Wednesday or Thursday. So that's I can't wait for tonight, because this is another big matchup, and it feels like a big moment for Auburn and facing a top 10 team in a multi-team event on big time television, TNT. And what's the key to victory? How does Auburn come away with a win against this really big team, an experienced point guard in Elyjah? What does it start with? And I think it starts with a fast start. And I've said that for the Houston game. I've probably said it about the Oregon game, maybe not as much, but against these good teams, you do not want to let them settle into an offensive rhythm. So defensively, if you're Keyshawn Murphy, if you're Sebastian Williams-Adams, if you're Keyshawn Hall, these guys are going to be the ones that are playing down low, playing those big men. And I'm not sure how the lineup might look tomorrow or tonight with that kind of matchup looming. But I would expect Auburn still rolls out the same starting lineup it did last night against Oregon, just because that's clearly the best five that you can play together and you can put together and the most experience. So that's what you want to throw out there, especially against a number 7 team in the country. But these guys can't get into foul trouble early. If they get into foul trouble, then Michigan's just going to keep feeding it down low and doing their thing there. So I really think it's as simple as not giving too many open shots and keeping it in front of you. You cannot let any of these big guys get behind you. Otherwise, like I said, you're probably going to get into foul trouble. You're going to try. These guys are going to try and chase down, get big blocks, and that's not the way you need to play. So excited for this game tonight. I think Auburn's going to be in it till the end, like that Houston game. Auburn can clearly play with the best of them this season. The Tigers' KenPom rank shot up to number 19. It was as low as 41 after the Bethune-Cookman game. So the analytics are starting to show. The analytics are starting to realize and recognize that this team it's not as good as it was last year, because we're probably never going to see a team as good as Auburn was last year. But it is kind of teetering on the elite of college basketball so far. And tonight can prove that it does belong with some of the best in college basketball tonight. So really excited to find out. 7:30 Central tonight in Michelob Ultra Arena, the Players Era Championship, Auburn, Michigan, a Sweet 16 rematch. Hey, here's another fun note. Auburn has beaten a Big Ten team in 9 consecutive tries. Let's see if it's 10 tonight with Stephen Pearl at the helm. Obviously, Auburn took down Michigan in the Sweet 16 last year. A big come-from-behind victory with Tahaad Pettiford leading the charge alongside Denver Jones and obviously all those other special Final Four participants for Auburn this past season. So really excited to break it down later tonight and really see how this team fares in this real neutral site. Obviously, Birmingham was basically a home game, but a neutral site game against a top 10 team. Oregon was the first step. You take down a team that's borderline top 25 and a team that was in the tournament last year that won the Players Era Championship. And now you get your biggest challenge to date, because I think this is as big of a challenge as Houston was, considering the circumstances and considering what's at stake for these ball clubs. So excited to break it all down with you. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, and we will have the full breakdown tomorrow here on the Barn Hoops Podcast. But thanks again for tuning in to this edition of the Barn Hoops Podcast.